Have you ever waited so long for something that you almost stopped believing it would happen? Not days, not weeks, years, maybe even decades. You prayed, you hoped, you trusted, and then slowly, you started wondering if the promise was ever really meant for you. That's where this story begins, not with a miracle, but with a delay. Because sometimes God's promises take so long that they seem impossible. And the question becomes, will you still trust God when the waiting lasts longer than you expected? When we arrive in Genesis 21, something extraordinary is about to happen. But to appreciate the miracle, we have to remember the journey. Years earlier, God had promised that Abraham and Sarah would have a son. The problem? They were already old, very old. And as the years passed, nothing happened. The promise remained, but the evidence did not. Imagine the conversations, every birthday, every passing year, every reminder that time seemed to be running out. Yet God kept repeating the promise. A son was coming, a future was coming, a nation was coming, even when it seemed impossible. Then Genesis 21 opens with these beautiful words. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said. Notice that phrase, as he had said. God did exactly what he promised. Not early, not late, right on time. Sarah becomes pregnant, and she gives birth to a son. The impossible becomes reality. The promise becomes visible. The waiting becomes a testimony. The child receives a name, Isaac. Isaac means he laughs. Why would God choose that name? Because laughter had been part of the story from the beginning. When Abraham first heard the promise, he laughed in amazement. When Sarah heard it, she laughed in disbelief. The promise seemed too good to be true, too impossible, too far beyond reality. But now the laughter is different. It's no longer laughter of doubt. It's laughter of joy, laughter of fulfillment, laughter of seeing God's faithfulness firsthand. Sometimes God transforms our skepticism into worship. Sometimes the very place where we doubted becomes the place where we praise. Isaac isn't just another child in Genesis. His birth changes everything because God had promised a nation would come through Abraham, kings would come through Abraham, blessing would come through Abraham, and now that future has begun. Isaac becomes the child of promise, the living proof that God keeps his word. Think about this. Every time Abraham looked at Isaac, he saw evidence that God could be trusted. Every smile, every laugh, every step Isaac took was a reminder. God said it. God did it. One of the biggest lessons in this chapter is timing. We often think if God is going to act, he should act now. But God operates differently. He sees the whole story, the whole future, the whole plan. Abraham and Sarah wanted the promise immediately. God had a bigger timeline, and when the fulfillment finally arrived, it was undeniable that God alone deserved the glory. No one could explain Isaac's birth apart from God. The miracle was too obvious. The timing was too perfect. The promise was too precise. Sarah says something remarkable. God has brought me laughter. Then she adds, everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Why? Because this story is bigger than one family. It's a testimony, a declaration that God specializes in impossible situations. Throughout Scripture, God repeatedly chooses circumstances where human strength is insufficient. Why? Because miracles point beyond people to God. When resources run out, God provides. When hope seems lost, God restores. When promises seem impossible, God fulfills. Isaac's birth becomes one of the earliest examples of a pattern seen throughout the Bible. What God promises, God accomplishes. Maybe you're in a season of waiting for direction, healing, restoration, provision, and answered prayer. And maybe the delay has tempted you to wonder if God forgot. Genesis 21 reminds us, God had not forgotten Abraham. God had not forgotten Sarah. God was working even when they couldn't see it. And he is often working when we cannot see it too. The greatest danger during waiting is not the delay itself. It's allowing the delay to convince us that God is absent. Because God's silence does not mean God's inactivity. Sometimes God is preparing what he promised. Sometimes He is preparing us for what He promised. God is faithful to every promise He makes. Stop interpreting God's faithfulness through your timetable. Remember what God has already done and trust Him with what is still unfinished. If God made the promise, the waiting is never wasted. If you're in a season where you're waiting God, comment below and say, I know God will bless me. Understand the word, trust the Lord, walk it out. Bible scholars, the next Bible story is waiting. Don't miss it.